Welcome to the ATA podcast, where we talk to former elite athletes sharing their insights and wisdom derived from successfully transitioning into life beyond the game. A very warm welcome to the Athlete Transition Accelerator podcast. Delighted to be joined by Bo Wullings today, a gentleman who has rowed professionally for the Dutch national team. Bo, first and foremost, a big thank you for spending your time with us today and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, yeah, and thanks for having me. So it's exciting to be here.
You're very welcome. Now, obviously, we mentioned the rowing there in the intro, but the process and the purpose of what we talk about is very much about helping people make that successful transition out of sport and into industry. But when we were doing our research on you, I have to ask, because I'm intrigued about this, you
Mhm.
already had a transition within the sporting sector, which is quite interesting. You began competitive swimming at a young age, around 12, swam all the way through. I think you swam competitively into college in the States
Mhm.
before you set foot in the rowing world. So just tell us a little bit about that, because that's interesting. That's quite a big shift relatively late in life, isn't it? So give us a bit of an insight into that.
True, very, very true. Well, I guess I've always been a sporty guy in that sense. So I started out really early in learning how to swim, and then I turned out to be pretty decent and starting making some time cuts to swim at regionals, and then went into like national level competitions. And exactly when I was 12, I made the decision to focus on swimming and really start training 6, 7, 8 times a week, building up till I was 18, and making the transition to the US because I was swimming in Amsterdam at the time. Had a great coach, but throughout my childhood, I've always been fascinated by the US.
Hmm.
My brother also did a year of high school, and we would go on holidays to the US. My dad would do some work there. And having been in Amsterdam for 6 years already, I wouldn't say I was bored, but I don't know. I didn't see myself swimming and trying to go for the next step in university. And then just started emailing coaches, and I created a profile on a website at that time called berecruited.com. And then I got contacted by coaches and made my way to New Orleans at first. And they had all these plans of building a Division 1 swim team in New Orleans. But when I went to the States, it was 2008, so that wasn't the best years in the US economically.
Hmm. Yeah.
And specifically, New Orleans was also still in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, if you might remember.
Of course. Yes. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, in life you also need the right context and the right base to build from. So there was definitely not enough momentum to build the dream that the coaches and the school had at the time. And actually, in the US, I also had to adapt and transfer schools. So after 2 years, they decided to cut the whole athletic program and not build into the Division 1, but actually cut everything back because there was just not enough tuition coming in. People were leaving New Orleans. So the dream of building something bigger wasn't happening. So even in the US, I had to adapt, and I think the skill of adapting and
Yes.
started in the US already. And then I actually made again same principle. I started emailing coaches, say, hey, these are my times. Let's have a conversation. And then I actually decided to transfer to Ohio State, which is one of the biggest schools in the US. Had an awesome year 3 and 4 of my eligibility in the US. Had a great time. Definitely swam faster at such a big school. But in swimming, the time cuts to make a national team level team, they're pretty, just an Excel sheet where you have to swim these times. And yeah, I just wasn't going to make those times. I was training 20 plus hours a week. And with the future being back in the Netherlands after 4 years and finishing my bachelor's, I decided that I would finish in the Netherlands and compete at the Olympic trials. But yeah, I knew already that I wasn't going to make those Olympic cuts. And being back in the Netherlands, not having the facilities of such a great school as Ohio State, yeah, yeah, the context wasn't there anymore. And so I had to, yeah, adjust my trajectory because I am an athletic guy and I like to work out and I'm very competitive.
Right.
And two of my roommates in the US were actually dating rowers. And they said I'm 6'7" or 201 in centimeters. And they
Yeah.
said, oh, these rowers are usually quite tall. You should try it. And at the same time, I also read a news article in a Dutch newspaper of two former swimmers in Dutch women's aid. So I was like, well, swimmers can make the transition. And then, yeah, also going back to the Netherlands, I thought it would be fun to keep working out because that's definitely a big design principle in my life. And then on the other side, socially, rowing is a very big student sport in the Netherlands. So just yeah, going into yeah, social bubble again and working out, that sounded like a lot of fun to me. And yeah, the rest is history. And I turned out to be pretty good at rowing. And then yeah, I started dreaming again of making the national team.
Nice, nice. And how far did you take the rowing then, Bo? How far? Because I get a sense you've got a humble guy. You sort of glossing through it, but you
Yeah.
transitioned from one sport into rowing, but it went pretty well.
Well, yeah. Yeah, where do I start? I took rowing. Yes, I made it to the national team. So I competed at World Championships. I guess at the national team, I joined in 2017 and I pretty much made it till COVID,
Hmm.
which is a whole other story. But yeah, and before that, I had a really successful crew with my student club actually. And we had some great times through that. But yeah, I was lucky with a lot of good guys around me were really good juniors. And when they joined the university ranks, yeah, they provided a stable boat for me. And I was a bit more mature. I was definitely very, with my background in the US, I was still, I could train a lot right away.
Hmm.
Because yeah, going back from doubles or twice a day and then going back to just training once a day, just was like, oh, that's easy, I could do that. Um, and yeah, maybe physically I was probably a better rower than swimmer,
Right, right.
being 6'7", and yeah, that accumulated into yeah, a nice fun way of growing and learning. And yeah, and then at the student club, I started competing internationally already in my second year, going to Henley. I don't know if you're aware, but
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
very big race in the UK.
Absolutely.
And we actually made the weekend, so we got quite close to the actually winning the whole thing for the student cup.
Fabulous.
And then the bug hit me, and I was doing my masters, and I was like making good times on the erg, on the rowing machine. I was getting back, or physically, I was showing a lot of potential because in rowing you have this kind of magical going sub 6 in a 2K erg test. And I started in my second year, I was already getting close to going sub 6. So I was like, well, physically, I have, I guess the time cut that you kind of need to be eligible or to show you're strong enough at least. So it was like, yeah, then my head started I started thinking about, well, maybe I could make a national team again and make that dream come true in another sport. So
I love it. I love it. Well, good for you, Bar. And that's why. I mean, this is very much about what comes next. But I think it's be fascinating. I'm sure to the listeners to say, oh wow, to be so dedicated, so committed to your swimming. I love the proactivity that you sort of found the opportunities in the States, despite the adversity at New Orleans, Hurricane
Mhm.
Katrina, the program sort of faltering. You then found your way into Ohio, did that, came back, and then thought, oh, actually, I can transition into a completely different discipline. So I love that proactivity and that sort of tenacity to say I can keep doing things. I can be successful in a different discipline. So I suppose the question we always then say to our guests is, what made you call time what was the decision to step out of sport, and then give us a little bit of an overview, because again, as I do on our research, you've been in a few different areas
Mhm.
up to the present day. So just give us a sort of brief overview of why did you stop, and what have you been doing since, really, because I think that's always of interest to people, how you stepped into that next chapter after elite sport.
Yeah. Well, I guess the ending in 2019, I got cut from the national team.
Hmm.
So that was one thing. And then in 2020, I kind of wanted to end it on my own terms because I got cut in May, and that's yeah, you've trained the whole winter, and I was like, well, I actually was I had my PB on the rowing machine, and I was like, well, I'm physically there, you know. I was like, who are they to tell me I can't row? So in 2020, I started my own project, and I actually had a very fit, but yeah, then the world closed down. And at that time, I was also 30 years old.
Hmm.
And another big red thread in my life is, yeah, I guess academics, or yeah, I study, or it's easy to learn for me. Uh,
Hmm.
I've always been very curious, and that's always I've had something next to sports.
Right.
And I guess maybe tapping into the productivity of, I knew swimming, I knew I wasn't the next Michael Phelps, and yeah, making millions in swimming, the probability of that is very, very slim. And even if you're an Olympic champ, I don't know if it's enough to yeah, make enough money. So there has to be a dual career.
Hmm.
And studying was, yeah, going very well. Like I said, I have two masters, one in sports psychology and one in business administration. So throughout my rowing career, I actually continued my academic career. So I was already thinking there's life after sports.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And also when I wasn't studying, I was also, yeah, I did my first, yeah, I guess networking, drinking coffee with people, trying to stay connected, being proactive in that sense. One, because I enjoyed it, because I'm curious, and yeah, please tell me more. So I started drinking some coffees, and it's like, hey, but when it actually, when the world closed down, it was actually quite hard to, well, at first I was like, I'm going to continue, you're not sure of how to adapt. So I started cycling a lot, trying to stay fit. Maybe the
Hmm.
world opens up again. Maybe in summer, I need to row. But at some point, I was like, well, this is going to take a while. So I started sending out resumes, and yeah, also the bank account was draining a little bit. So there was definitely some pressure to yeah, get a job
Yeah.
and not be that picky. Um, but yeah, having the try always throughout my career, studied throughout my career, I've always been drinking coffees because I knew there was, yeah, there wasn't enough money in rowing. I think we made, when I finally made the national team, I think I made 2,500 euros or 2,000 euros a month, which was enough to live from.
Yes, but not
Not-
to save a great
Yeah,
deal. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's a theme coming through, Bo, which I
yeah.
which I admire in you. We always say to elite athletes, that unfortunately the sporting chapter will end at some point, and
Mhm.
you hope it's a long way down the track. You hope it's on your terms. You've had extreme situations, both in your studies with Hurricane Katrina, then COVID. Things you can't predict. Sometimes it's injury, sometimes it's selection. So
Yeah.
invest in your future whilst you're competing, and you're certainly a poster boy for that in terms of doing your degrees, doing your masters, having those qualifications. Then you jump on another thing that we say time and again is networking is an ongoing process. You don't have to go to major events. It's just, as you say, be curious, be proactive, have coffees with people face to face, virtual meetings. You
Mhm.
never know when that will open up. So you're striking on a few of the themes that we talk about regularly. So, what was the first thing you did then when you first stepped out of rowing? What was your first job? I noticed you've had quite a heavy involvement in recruitment, but you've also been
Yeah.
involved with some coaching work as well. So, just give us a bit of an overview of how you've stepped into industry post rowing.
Well, I guess that was right before I made the national team. I graduated, um, and I had this 6 months, and then I started my real first, I guess, part-time adult job, which was as a campus recruiter at one of the bigger banks in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
So I guess that was my real first job. Um, and that kind of gave me the the mark of being in recruitment.
Yep.
So when I then made the national team, and well, I made some money, or I earned my, I was a professional rower. But then COVID, and it was actually a difficult time to start applying for jobs because
Of course.
people were interested in me as a person, in the story I had, like I said, going from the US, and they were like, "Oh, you've been very proactive and great
Yes.
guy, but you don't have any real working experience." So at that time, I was still fascinated, maybe joining a traineeship or one of the junior graduate programs, but there were actually a lot of big companies having a hiring freeze because, yeah, nobody was knew what to do.
Hmm.
And then yeah, the message was a bit like, well, very cool story, but you don't have any working experience. And then also smaller companies were like, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. So I kind of stumbled throughout. The girlfriend of another rower who was also recruiting and knew I was looking for a job. And she was like, well, we have this RPO recruitment agency where I started as a recruiter for companies that didn't have a recruitment department yet,
Hmm.
and then I would source for them, but also build the first steps of maybe systems and training hiring managers and interviewing. But in practice, it was also a lot of sourcing and just sending DMs on LinkedIn. And after a year, I was like, well, I've done these two master degrees, so I could do a little bit more.
Hmm.
World started opening up a little bit more, and I actually made the switch to consultancy.
Right.
Um, but every time there was all of these jobs were through coffees or the network. Maybe you should talk to this guy, or maybe you should talk to this lady, and then all of those things came, yeah, through the power of networking and just raising your hand. It was like, well, I'm thinking of consultancy, and then the golden rule of networking. So who should I talk to next after?
Exactly. Exactly. No, and again, it's lovely to listen to, Bo, because it's easy for us, Carl and I are chatting with athletes on a daily basis, and some people really buy into it. They go, yeah, 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 I get it, I'm going to do it. Some people are like, I'm not sure I want to do it. But I love the way you position it, quite relaxed. It's, a couple of times you've mentioned partners of teammates, girlfriends, etc.
Mhm,
It's putting yourself out there, and once people are aware of what you're interested in, what you're looking for, it's amazing how
mhm,
things can sometimes align to open other doors. So I think there's one of the things we always say to people is what are the transferable skills that
mhm,
cross over from sport into industry that are helping you now in this chapter. I think something I'm certainly hearing from you as well. There's a curiosity there, and there's a proactivity in what you do, which has helped moving you forward in life. But is there
mhm,
anything else that you would say? Actually, some of the things I honed, learned in sport, both in my swimming and in my rowing, are certainly helping me because this is something that we often find a bit of a mental block with existing athletes. They're like, well, I'm a soccer player, or I'm a cricketer, or I'm a netball player, or I'm a rower. How does that translate? How am I going to carry that forward into industry? So what are your thoughts from your personal experiences on that, Bo?
I thought, well, the first thing that comes to mind, I think I talk also about, or I'm a keynote speaker now when I talk about high performance.
Hmm.
And you probably heard this time and time again, but sometimes cliches are annoyingly true. And I think the thing that differs between high performance and as a professional athlete, you're by definition a high performer.
Hmm.
And it's not, I guess it's the how many times you pick yourself up and do it again. Um, the honest, consistent work. So you never know which coffee or which handshake it's going to be, but one of them is going to be important. And you never know which one or when it might come into fruition. And yes, you can be strategic about who you want to talk to and then create your zone. So not everybody is it can be a bit transactional in that sense and strategic. Um, but I guess that is also being a good teammate, like being invested um, and being curious in that sense. And I think if you're, especially if you're in a team sport, being interested in your teammates, like, hey, what's happening, instead of burning them down, is like, that's not good enough, like
Yeah,
the dynamics. So in that sense, I think that's a really important thing in one, the consistent effort, because in sports, especially in a sports like rowing, you might have like 3 races a year, and the rest of the year you're working out.
yeah. And I was going to say, when I hear you talk about consistency and honest
Yeah.
work, I know and have friends that have rowed and swum at elite levels, and there's no substitute for that. I mean, you guys are just grinding and grinding and grinding. So there's one
Yeah.
thing you all, even at as you say, university level, people that might not make it into professional rowing and swimming, you can't take shortcuts, and you've got to be consistent. And it's early mornings, and it's volume, and you have to do it, don't you?
Yeah, you have to do it when nobody's watching. Um, and then, yeah, there's no money, there's no real obvious gold medal,
Yeah,
or that you're gonna get. So you have to do it for the love of maybe suffering,
yeah,
and rowing and maybe cycling. The real aerobic sports are definitely, yeah, you need to do the work because you love it, and I think that's a very transferable skill.
yes,
Um, At the same time, I also struggle sometimes in doing the work again, because the purpose or the goal might not be as exhilarating. So trying to find that goal again is difficult, and I still struggle with that, because sometimes, yeah, work is not as exciting as the Olympic Games.
of course,
That's also the
yeah.
honest. So throughout my athletic career or my professional career, like being in contract or maybe trying my own thing, that's been a, yeah, constant battle in finding that motivation, because
Yes, and you're right, and I admire you can do it. When you've tasted that elite level competition and that intoxicating element of elite sport, it's sometimes difficult to make that adjustment. And that's an interesting thing I just want to touch on in terms of, you've mentioned a few times about working out being really important to you. A lot of people talk to us about, I'm struggling with my identity, and transition's not easy. So, am I right, without putting words in your mouth, Bo, that actually maintaining your health and fitness has been a key part of transition? Obviously, you're not probably doing the hours, the volume that you used to do, but that's a little bit of an anchor that's allowed you to transition into industry and have some stability almost as you're going through the navigation of which job, which conversation, the networking, etc. Have you maintained quite a strong commitment for your health and well-being?
Yes, and also struggled with it at the same time. It's a really big identity shift, and even yeah, even at birthdays, like when you go there, like, oh, how's your rowing going, or how's this? As externally, you get a lot back,
Hmm.
so you get the rewards of socially, of
Yes, the validation.
special, or you're
Yes,
well, so that's difficult, like everybody has a job, and as a rower, so there's definitely an external validation thing.
yes.
Um, but I've never worked out to look good in the mirror. Um, so that's one thing. So that's one of the things that I struggle with sometimes, when it's just that. So I don't want to get fat. Motivation doesn't work for me.
Hmm.
So I try to set goals still. So train towards a race. Um, but I'm now, the older I get, I also try to pick sports. So I've just started padel,
Yeah,
which is way different than rowing, and I'm
yes,
awkward and tall. But I really enjoy learning, and I think that's, again, because sports like cycling or the aerobic things, you get pretty good at right away, but you still have that little voice that is like, well, I used to be this fit, or I used to be that.
yeah,
And then I really enjoy doing other sports where I'm bad, At
Yeah,
least in my
you can
eyes.
feel the progress. You can see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you get that dopamine fix again. So that really helped me um, yeah, not compared to the good old days.
Yeah.
Because I've never really swam again because it's just that just you feel bad. It's annoying. You don't get that flowy state of like being young and fit and um,
No,
but
that makes sense.
I
That
think
makes sense, Bo.
rowing
I
is a
think
bit different. But I also really enjoy having my weekends back. And rowing is a bit more time consuming in that sense. So you need to find a boat or a partner or um, so in that sense, I also really enjoy having my agenda being more free,
yes.
my weekend back and doing different things.
Yes.
Uh,
I think you strike on some great points because it's the fear of the unknown with so many athletes that listen to the podcast. Like, how's it going to be? What's it going to look like? And
mhm.
I like your illustration there, stepping into new things, trying something new because you can't compare it to the old you. You're not swimming anymore, but when you step on the paddle court, it's completely new. You've
Mhm.
no frame of reference, but you feel that dopamine hit, as you say, of growth and
Yeah,
development. But also, I think it's important not to drop off a cliff. So many elite athletes have trained pretty much every day for years. And then when they're struggling at the most difficult period of what is my identity, who am I, well, you can still maintain that. You don't have to do it in the early hours, you don't have to do the same volume, but maintain that a little bit to help the transition. So that's a good tip. You've given some good tips already, Bo, but one of the things we always say to people is, with the benefit of hindsight, you talked about cliches, but they're often so right. Here's one we use a lot, that everybody's a genius with the benefit of hindsight. So now that you've transitioned out of elite sport, you're well down the track into industry and professional roles. We
Mhm.
always like to ask our guests, what's one piece of advice that you would say, do this? If you do this, it will make transition a bit easier. And it might be a repetition of one of the earlier points you've made. And equally, if you had to say, don't do this, with the benefit of hindsight, don't do this, it'll make you transition earlier. What comes to mind for you on that question, Bo?
Ooh. Um, I think networking, it's but not just professionally. And every time I talk to different athletes, it's like the feeling of yeah, when when
Mm-hmm.
I talk to other athletes, um, and even in the mental space, because I work now as a coach and have a psychology background, even in finding a therapist, um, even sporting psychologist, I was like, you don't know how it is to be at that level, when you just have that experience from the book. So I struggled in finding my the people like I talk to about
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And I think one of the best psychologists or mentors or coaches I had was actually a former rower also. Um, but she was a clinical psychologist and not way too focused on traumas and stuff. And I wasn't doing that bad, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
finding that understanding. So in that sense, also finding your place and invest in that. You're not alone, but at the same time, it's also nice to find like-minded people who maybe have a higher level of understanding.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
So do network, but try and find the people that resonate with you, that you feel
yeah,
that connection with.
for sure. And well, also in my work that I do now, um, I think we're in the Western world, we're very head heavy. Um, and yeah, you bring your physical self. So don't, yeah, for sure, let go. um, but it's that feeling of um, being fit, being strong, being in that nice, having so much headspace and freshness of being on the top of your game is a feeling that not a lot of people understand, I think. So keep
Hmm.
investing in your body,
Yes.
um, because you bring your physical self. And as a coach, I also try to incorporate, yeah, bringing people outside, actually going for a walk. Um, and that's, at least for me, it was very, I couldn't sit in the office. As I know for myself that I could be a very chilled guy, and maybe on the outside I'm quite relaxed and neutral, but I need to use that physical energy. And going back from working out twice a day and that not doing anything, actually, yeah, I got depressed by it. So I need to find a way that keep moving, and it doesn't have to be Tour de France level or Olympic level anymore, but trying to find ways that are, yeah, design your life a little bit where at least keep incorporating the physicalness
Yes.
you
Yeah.
as.
No, I think that's it's great advice for all of us, not just elite athletes. And we
Yeah.
both share that passion for coaching. That's why I mentioned the physical health, because I think you've framed that perfectly. Don't abandon your physical health and well-being. We're all
Hmm.
guilty now, quite sedentary jobs, virtual connectivity. You can go from one Teams or Zoom meeting to the next and hardly move. But if you want to be a consistent high performer, maintaining that physical health and well-being is an integral part. I think we're both very much aligned on that, and that's another advantage for elite athletes that
Hmm.
unfortunately a lot of people are neglecting their health and well-being in traditional industry. So it's another X factor. You've got the background, you've got the pedigree, you've
Hmm.
looked after your health and well-being. Just maintain it, and that's something that will help you set a standard when you go into industry, because it's not always the norm. I agree with you. You know, the simple thing of just having a walking meeting, go outside, have a conversation while you walk. It doesn't all have to be virtually based. So no, I think
Yeah.
that's good
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, and I also had to learn that there is more work out there, there's different ways of working.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be in the office, and I also struggle with that because I'm that, university graduated guy, so I should work at a big four, and especially rowing is a bit, you go into work for a bank or
Hmm.
and I'm still struggling with that. So I should do this, and then I'm finding ways that there's a whole lot of ways of earning a living. So you have that choice. So I think that's also why a lot of athletes go out in the entrepreneurial space. But that's also an option,
Yes.
which
Just
I,
on that struggle, Bo, where
yeah.
does that struggle come from? Is that wrestling with what you think society expects you to do? I've been a rower, should go and work into banking, etc. I think as I'm listening to you, it's quite an interesting point, this, because you're
Mhm.
finding your own path, your own way. You said, I don't really like being in an office, and you've got this academic background. So I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. How you, in essence, it sounds like you've trusted your own inner sort of gut feel of where should I go, what should I do, what's appealing to me, to sort of build your career around that rather than what society expects you to do. Is that a fair assessment?
Um, well, yeah, that external thing, that's I think in finding my own way, in finding that new identity, um, and what is, I guess, very clear as an athlete, and especially as a rower, you have this one goal, and then you eat, sleep, train, repeat, and
Yeah.
that's much the way forward. And then maybe throughout, because rowing is quite a elitist sport. There's a lot of university grads. So a lot of people end up, at the big corporates. And
Hmm.
so it might seem in the beginning that that's the way to go. Um, and context the people surrounding you, then yeah, that seems like a logical next step. And I found myself, one, having so many choices was quite difficult for me, because the path towards, because the ambition was there, like I should do this thing, like I have all these degrees and I should follow this. And then there were so many, there's 1,000 jobs you could apply for, and
Hmm.
which one would I enjoy? And yeah, that was definitely, um, and at the same time also not being the best again, being at the bottom, was quite a learning curve. And I was like, whoa, I can't do this yet. So, but you still have that urge to be the best, and um, but then it helps me to at least make it a bit more relative and say, well, it took me probably 6, 7 years before I was a decent rower or a really good rower. So maybe being the best at my job will take a certain amount of time also, and being patient in that sense. Wow.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things after my transition was difficult, being patient with myself. Um, Yeah, and also letting go of some stigmas or contextual things that I thought I had to do because of that's what you do when you have a university degree, and then finding out there's a lot more ways to roam, and I actually enjoyed those a lot more. Um, yeah, so that's
No,
again,
it's great insight, Bo. I'm just listening and enjoying this because this is all, it's the human side of the transition. So again, these themes keep resurfacing as I listen to you, that
Mhm,
you've been proactive, the networking, something that you've advocated throughout our conversation, but
mhm,
finding people that you connect with, not just doing what people expect you to do, whether that's from a mentor conversation or whether that's a professional role. You've invested a lot of time and energy into your degrees, which undoubtedly serve you well, but that doesn't mean you have one predetermined route into one of the big four. You've used that knowledge, you've used those experiences, and you've crafted the opportunities that you're now enjoying. So, and then that final point about be patient. So, something we say
yeah,
time and again. Very rarely does someone walk out of elite sport with the key, put it in the first lock, and that's them set for life. And you're an example of that. You've tried different things. You've gone into recruitment. Now you found your niche in coaching and high performance. But it takes years to be a success at elite sport. Why not expect a little bit of time? Going back to some of the traits, do the honest work, do the work, and watch the results come. So I think there's so much behind the wisdom. You have got that practical illustration of you're not just talking the talk, you're actually walking the walk
mhm,
alongside it. So, no, it's been really interesting, Bo. We always sort of bring things to a bit of a conclusion with a quick fire set of questions that initially came out of the Athlete Transition Accelerator community, but always proved popular, always create a bit of debate and internal sort of feedback with listeners and people within the community. So won't give you a lot of time to think on these. I'll just hit you with them. But you've shared a lot of advice with us today. But if we challenge you and said, what's one piece of advice, possibly the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Maybe it's professional, maybe it's sports related. But if you were going to share that one nugget of wisdom, what comes to mind on that question?
um, fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
Like it, like
Yeah.
it. And
Uh,
go on. Sorry, I cut you off there, Bo.
yeah. Do you want me to elaborate
Yeah,
why?
absolutely. What does that mean to you?
I think I think a lot of people start, or I think it's along the same lines, and I also use this in my coaching, is feedback is not a call to action, but a call to reflection. And I think I pride myself as sometimes maybe a bit too analytical or reflective. I'm definitely headstrong. But yeah, taking the time, what am I actually trying to solve for? And I've done that in rowing, like getting what actually moves the boat,
Hmm.
that's putting the oar in the water. And I think a lot of the coaching we do is like, or stretch your pinky and then the body, but it's like, what is actually propelling the boat, and how can I make the oar spend as much time propelling the boat and thinking that of externally. And I think that also in consulting or in jobs, what also in your endeavors of transitioning, what are actually the problems you're trying to solve, and then the solution will show itself probably
Yes.
a lot sooner. So taking the time, so what is it that I want? What do I want?
Yeah.
Start from that. And then we can think later if that the company values or your family or your friends, but taking the time for what problems do I want to solve for myself? And then the solutions are usually quite clear, then I should send a resume and that's, a very clear action.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people go into action after whatever happens in their life and just start sending emails or so taking that step back is like, okay, what am I actually trying to solve for? And I think that's in sports a very good practice to have, taking that pause and having that one breath is like, okay, what is the situation? Having that
Hmm.
situational awareness and then making the shot. Or and also in jobs, like yeah, taking that time to reflect. And so why am I actually doing this?
Yeah. No, well said. I think that's a great piece of advice that every one of us could apply, irrespective where we are on our sort of journey. So I love that. The next one is a little bit more light-hearted, but you'll have heard this one before. But nonetheless, we're always curious what comes out. It's the dinner party question. You can invite three people to dinner for a good night of company and entertainment. They can be dead or alive because we've got magical powers to bring them back to the table. But who would be on the guest list for you, Bo, if you were inviting three people to come and join you for dinner?
Um, well, being in the coaching space, I think Tony Robbins is a great inspirator, very American and big in volume and
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah,
but
he'd be a key influence on the dinner. You're right. Yeah.
yeah, but he definitely has a lot of wisdom. Um, I think Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan's
Hmm.
coach, um, with the US college. I think just Michael Jordan is, and the whole story behind him and his legacy. I think he's very, very inspirational.
Yeah, it'd be good. I'd love to ask him how he managed big egos because he had a lot of
Yeah.
egos to manage, didn't he, in that era with the Bulls.
And with Rodman and Jordan, how did that? Yeah.
Yeah, I like it so far. Yeah, who's finishing the
Um,
invite list?
uh, I think Ricky Gervais, because he just cracks me up. And I think he has a very yeah, nice way of making fun of himself, not taking life too serious,
Yeah,
uh, and yeah, having fun along the way
yeah,
uh, is also a great predictor, I think, of high performance or um, yeah, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable.
yeah.
So
Love it. Well, that's one of the best guest lists we've had. Actually, I'd like to invite myself. I think it'd be a good group that, Bo. So no, I love that. Last question on the quick fire. You're obviously an academic chap. You've invested in your education. We always like to ask: is there a book that particularly has resonated with you in your life that you would share as a recommendation to say this is a book that's had an impact on me?
um, well, lately I've actually coming back to Atomic Habits.
Hmm.
Um, and I think in that space, we often forget the honest work.
Yeah,
Um, and that power of consistency. Um, yeah, I think
yeah.
that's
It's a good one. And it's a good reminder. And it's
coming
something that's
back.
come through your career, as you've said a few times today with us, in terms of the pool, the rowing. It's a theme that you obviously take a lot of strength from. So,
Yeah.
last thing on the quick fire, is there anybody in your network, Bo, that you'd say, oh, we should approach them, we should invite them onto the podcast? We always ask if there's somebody that you think, well, they've had an interesting story of transition out of elite sport, might be rowing, might be swimming, might be outside of that, but is there anybody that you think, oh, yeah, you should give them a contact?
Good question. Um, Good question. Well, I I don't know if you would get him on, but I've always one of my heroes when I was still a swimmer was Pieter van der Hogeband. I think he's the chef de mission of the Olympic team, where he actually just they didn't extend his pro or his contract, but I would love to hear his story. I think he's very inspirational.
Yeah, fabulous. That's
Uh,
in there. Well, we can but try. We can reach out. It's always nice.
hey,
Some of our best guests have come from recommendations and referrals. So
yeah.
we'll definitely take that on. Well, listen, Bo, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I'm sure you'll have resonated with a diverse range of our listenership. If somebody wants to reach out and connect with you, we always like to ask, where's the best place to find you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it somewhere else? How do people connect with you?
Oh yeah, definitely LinkedIn. Just send me a DM, and the company I founded is called PX Base. So px-base.nl. And there's a contact form, and you can even yeah, make a 20-minute coffee call in my agenda if you so those are the best ways to.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we put those links into the show notes as well. So fabulous. Well, listen, Bo, thanks again. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Very
Amazing.
welcome.
Thanks for joining us this week on our ATA podcast. If you found this conversation insightful and it resonates with your journey, please subscribe, follow the show, and stay connected with us for more insight, resources, and information on how we at ATA are supporting your preparation for life beyond the game.